my trust in the European institution is very limited. Not only because I do not think much about those who run the show, but I'm not quite sure who runs the show.
Ez itt a Stratégiai Részleg. Orbán Balázs és Kohán Mátyás rendszeres beszélgetése a magyar stratégiáról. Nagy stratégiáról, kicsi stratégiáról, földhöz ragadt stratégiáról és elvont stratégiáról. Ma Lengyelországról fogunk beszélgetni, amely Magyarország stratégiájában mindig is kulcsszerepet játszott. Korábban szövetségesként, ma pedig reménybeli szövetségesként. Balázshoz és hozzám ezúttal a harmadik beszélgető partner is csatlakozik, nem is akárki. Richard Legutko professzor, a jog és igazságosság korábbi európai parlamenti delegáció vezetője. Ezért angolul fogunk beszélgetni. Szerdecsne vítami, professzor.
Very good morning.
Hello, good morning. Jó reggel.
So, let's start with Poland, because Poland, I think, is hot as ever in Hungarian politics and in the minds of Hungarian viewers. Everybody's asking in Hungary how the Platforma Obywatelska-led coalition won, and then how they won again at the European elections, this time for real. They become the first party. What did PiS do wrong? What did PO do right? And how does your party try to turn the tables?
Well, it's a difficult question because I do not really know the answer myself. I know some scraps of opinions and suggestions. I think that what was successful on the part of the Civic Platform and Donald Tusk was an extremely intensive, aggressive, negative campaign. I mean, there was pure negation and very vulgar. The official slogan of Donald Tusk and his party was the F word. It was based on the F word. So you can imagine what kind of negative emotions he managed to produce. And the paradox is that Donald Tusk, as a manager, as a person who is responsible and runs the country as a prime minister, is very incompetent, disorganized, chaotic. Whereas as a person who destroys the public culture and attacks the opposition, he's extremely efficient. I mean, I would say 80% of his energy is devoted, and it continues to be devoted to fighting his enemies. It's a pure hatred, very aggressive, and I'm sorry to say, it was effective.
What can we expect from PiS in the next year and a half, especially considering the presidential election where PiS is risking losing its last bastion of power, which is President Andrzej Duda? How does the party try to face the new challenge and renew itself and try to present a better strategy?
Well, you're right that the presidential elections next year presidential elections will be extremely important. I mean, if we lose those elections, then the system will be closed, and I don't even want to think about the possible consequences of that. Seeing what the Donald Tusk government has been doing, whether we will find, or whether the candidate, the official candidate has not been nominated, or it's not nominated officially, so to speak. If we manage to have another Andrzej Duda, then we can survive. And if we don't, then the situation will be, I would say, extreme. because the Donald Tusk government clearly wants to annihilate, eliminate, outlaw the opposition, destroy altogether, and in that ungodly task, he is blessed, as you know, not only by the European institutions, but also by other international institutions. And that shows the kind of world we live in. That is, we live in a world in which something conspicuously disgraceful is being presented as a noble act. I mean, when we were in power, the opposition could do whatever they want, and even more. And that was called
violation
of rule of law, a violation of democracy. And now you have the government that openly wants to liquidate the opposition, and it is considered to be the triumph of democracy, as I said, not only by those villains from the European institutions, but also other organizations. The Chatham House of all organizations, the Chatham House, awarded Donald Tusk for the staunch defense of democracy. I mean, what are we coming to? I mean, is everybody insane? I mean, it's what I'm telling you is not a secret knowledge. I mean, what is happening in Poland? It's not a secret knowledge. It's out in the open. Anyone, with an elementary degree of intelligence can adequately describe what is going on. I mean, it's a political gangsterism. And then, those reputable guys from the Chatham House or other organizations say, well, this is the triumph of democracy. I mean, there is something sick in today's world.
Do you think, Professor, that the strategic autonomy of Europe in terms of directing its own China policy, trade policy, its own financing its own defense, do you think that's something that's desirable, or do you think that's something that's a chimera in the heads of continental powers and Hungary?
Well, my trust in the European institution is very limited, not only because I do not think much about those who run the show, but I'm not quite sure who runs the show. I mean, that's the problem. Is it the Commission President? Is it the Chancellor of the
not him for sure.
Of Germany, yeah.
Of Germany. I mean, who really has the power? Who makes the decision? I don't know. I mean, it's such a lack of transparency in it that I don't really trust the European institutions, because I do not know whether some deals are not being made behind our backs, China or Russia, as it happened in the past. So I don't think that there is such a thing as European, well, whatever you call it, because
strategic autonomy.
Well, strategic autonomy, yes, because I don't think there is such a entity as political Europe. Entity as Europe.
It's very interesting for us as well. As you know, we had serious political fights with Angela Merkel, Chancellor Angela Merkel, and she was not very satisfied with our performance.
Sure.
And it was good in that way. But back at that time, what I experienced is that European politics was completely different. So if you wanted to manage something for your country or a bigger thing about initiate a strategic discussion at least with an outcome, then you had to talk with the German Chancellor. And then if you could make an agreement, obviously not just her and not just you, but she involved other important elements as well, and then there was an outcome and there was an execution after it. So it was operating like a sane structure of power. But now it completely disappeared. So it's like, as you mentioned, Professor, with whom you want to talk, and if you make an agreement with somebody, then it turns out that some other people see it in a different way, and they are blocking the execution. So, and I think this lack of leadership, but leadership in a good sense, not in a federalist way, that the federalist response is always like, this is why we have to make more centralization, and then if we have more centralization and more grab of power from the center, then these problems will be solved. It's obviously not the case because they don't want to listen if they have the power. So, but there was a working mechanism of a political mechanism how to manage things, and these were not good decisions all the time, like Merkel era with the migration policy, with the Green Deal issue. So all the big mistakes were going back to this era, but at least there was a mechanism where you knew how things are looking like behind the curtain. But today it's over, and the next 5 years it's totally terra incognita for everyone. So we don't know where Europe will go. How should we cooperate more, Central Europe together?
Well, something that is very difficult to attain, that is Central and Eastern Europe should work together. That is, we should. I think we should understand that there is politically there is a lot of potential in Central in Eastern Europe, provided that we are brave enough and determined enough to stand up against those who want to control us. I know it's very difficult. There are conflicts, long arm of history. In that part of Europe, and I know that most of the politicians in this part of Europe rather seek protection from the big guys than oppose them. They rather have the blessings of German Chancellor than defy German politics openly. I understand that, but. I think V4 at one time seemed to be promising. I know. I remember Jarosław Kaczyński had a meeting with Angela Merkel, and I was accompanying him at this meeting. And I remember Angela Merkel, who was quite irritated when the conversation was about V4. So I'm your friend. I would have Germany. I'm join you. I mean, we have to work together. She was clearly nervous that we should become more strategically autonomous, if you will. Yeah. So that's my dream. But
this is definitely in line with the Hungarian strategy. When we came to the Carpathian Basin more than 1,000 years ago, and then Saint Stephen created the Hungarian state, he has first convinced the Germans not trying to occupy us, and then he could find a political modus vivendi with them. So
that does seem like something we can cooperate on.
Yeah.
However, we need to move on now to the last topic. Speaking of somebody who you don't want to be governed by, Ursula von der Leyen just managed to have a majority of over 400 MEPs in the European Parliament, while in the same European Parliament there also seems to be a very strong shift to the right. There is now, to the right of the European People's Party, a conundrum of three political factions which are stronger than ever. Patriots for Europe is the third largest faction in the European Parliament. Can the European right do anything in the European Parliament?
If the EPP were a conservative party, we would have had a majority, right, in the European Parliament. But of course, the EPP is not a conservative party, and they secured the nomination of Ursula von der Leyen by entangling themselves more with the left, because Ursula von der Leyen was it was the left, right, the Greens, the Liberals, and that voted in favor. I do not think that much will change in the coming term. The Patriots are surrounded by the cordon sanitaire. So is this small group with the AfD.
Europe of Several Nations.
Yeah, the ECR received some positions, but still does not have, I think, any impact on the current policy of the European Parliament. Giorgia Meloni failed to influence the selection of the Commission President, and therefore have influence on the policy of the European Commission. She will probably she will receive some candies, so to speak. And so I don't think much will change, and the fact that Ursula von der Leyen became the President Commission means that there will be a continuation of what we have had so far. So sorry, but more of the same.
On the other hand, it's obvious that the European Parliament's majority is a liberal majority. They control that institution. So I'm not very sad that this is how conservative political forces are treated. I mean, it's really how the liberals treat their political opponents. If they grab an institution, they or try to kick the conservatives out, and they want to control everything. The same is happening in the European Parliament. But I think it's important that the right is more united, as you mentioned, influencing the public sphere. We cannot influence. After the betrayal of the European People's Party, we cannot influence the legislation on that side. We have other options on the council side and some other sides, but we can influence the political debate, and we can be the voice of the people, which is, I think, the strongest position domestically and strongest position in European politics. So I'm probably in a short term, I understand why you are a bit pessimistic that this bad show will continue for 5 weeks, but I think in the long term, the energy is on that right-wing conservative party side, because if they do it right and they don't sign up for, I'm seeking for positions, so I'm ready to make compromises, you started at the beginning, then they can be the representatives of the European people in Brussels, which is I think, it can be a very trendy position. And on that basis, a long-term political organization and influence mechanism can be built up, and we can be stronger in the future.
I do not have much trust in some of the supposedly or allegedly conservative parties. Now, take the Great Britain, the country that we thought was fortunate enough to leave the European Union, and what happened. It turned out that the EU did not leave the Great Britain. This is nowadays the Great Britain, even under the Conservative government, more so under the current government. It's probably the most oppressive, despotic, politically correct country in Europe. Leaving the EU or having the influence of the European politics does not mean that you will have a viable, decent, civilized society in your country. The forces that control the European Union are also in our midst, and that's the reason that I'm not very optimist. But also, I may say that I'm not quite an optimist because I can afford to be so, being outside of politics. If I could continue to be a politician, I could not afford to be a pessimist.
That is an even better note to finish on. Gentlemen, to USA, dziękuję bardzo, köszönöm szépen. A nézőknek pedig azt mondom, hogy legyenek kedvesek feliratkozni arra a YouTube csatornára, amelyen ezt az adást látták, amennyiben óhajtanak további adásokat is látni, és azt is mondom nekik, hogy van olyan podcast platform is, amelyen hangban hallgathatnak minket, hogyha ilyen helyen hallgatnak minket, mindenképp iratkozzanak fel oda is. Hamarosan jelentkezünk ismét, viszontlátásra.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.